Well, welcome everyone. I got a really awesome guest on my podcast today. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and kind of what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Sean. My name is Kevin Yee. I've been here in Vietnam since 2009. Um, I originally came out here to Vietnam for spring break. I was doing a study abroad in Singapore at NUS, great university. And at that time, I was getting my MBA from the University of Southern California. And I just was really interested in the different opportunities going on in emerging markets, especially in Southeast Asia. And so I had the opportunity to do a semester abroad in Singapore. My mom is originally from Singapore, so I thought, hey, that's great. I can pursue that, kind of follow that curiosity of what it's like in an Asian market and a developing market, as well as connect to my family, a bit of my family and a bit of my heritage. So that's what brought me out here originally to Southeast Asia. And during spring break, I reconnected with someone who I knew back in undergrad, also at University of Southern California or USC, and we hit it off, and we ended up started dating. Had a really good time, just kind of seeing the city through her eyes and getting to know the city, and just really fell in love and thought there's lots of great opportunities here. So I've been here since 2009. Had a number of different roles in marketing, retail, and over the past 5 to 7 years, had the opportunity to take senior leadership roles, and so again, doing things in marketing and growth, and just basically being a good steward and champion of the business and building and developing young Vietnamese professionals. And so I have a lot of fun here, working here, being a part of the market and contributing. And originally from Los Angeles.
Awesome. That's a lot. There's a lot to unpack there, but that's awesome. It's one of the things that you said that I've met a couple people that came here traveling to Vietnam, and then it like this door opened, and they were like, "Wow, there's opportunity here." and
Right.
and it's interesting too that whatever that might be. I originally studied screenwriting and English, writing composition, because I came from Los Angeles as a filmmaker. That was my
Hmm.
my foundation. Then I moved into business and doing media, but I still love writing. And one of the great stories is Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And one of the main character of any, whether it be, and this applies to pop culture too. You look at
Hmm.
Thor or Star Wars. Luke Skywalker goes on this journey, and in that journey, something happens. It's like
Right.
Thor gets cast out of Asgard, comes to Earth, and then suddenly he loses Mjolnir, and he has to go undergo this journey. And then, like, one of the things that's really cool there is, like, you had this hero's journey where you came to this new place and you found this new path. That's always an awesome story. Now, what was it that when you came here, what were some of the things that you said, this is interesting to me? What were some of the things that you saw in the market that made you go, this is something that has potential. This is something that I want to kind of put my energy into.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when I first moved here in 2009, well, how long have you been in Vietnam?
I've been on and off since 2001. So then
Okay,
I moved
wow.
back to
Okay,
the States in 2003. Then I came back in
okay,
2013 full time, and I've been here since.
okay, got it. Okay, all right. So, in 2009, and since you actually came earlier, um, you could see there's still a lot of work to be done. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, um, we lived in District 4, but my wife, now wife, she worked in District 1. I worked out in District 5, and power things as things that you take for granted as an American or a Westerner, the power goes out all the time,
Yep.
especially during the hotter dry season, right? When the hydropower plants aren't able to run, and so there's all these different kind of little friction points, and I thought, well, that's kind of interesting because maybe I can do things to solve for these different friction points, right? Maybe not necessarily in terms of like electricity, but the the gaps and the opportunities in the market were very palpable. The other thing I thought was great was, and I ended up in entertainment. I ended up in, I guess, retail entertainment. I worked for Vietnam's largest cinema chain, and worked my way up. Started off as a marketing manager, eventually became the marketing director there. And along that journey, I think there's quite a few people that come to Vietnam um, with this mentality of either one of two things, meaning like they've got this idea and they want to do this new idea in Vietnam, or they've seen something work in another market and then they come to Vietnam. And especially back then in 2009, where Facebook, for example, Facebook, if you wanted to access Facebook, you needed a VPN,
Yeah.
right? Mobile data was pretty much non-existent, right? Um, so in that sense, that back then in 2009, like you'd be able to, so to speak, come from the future, and not in a not in an evil way, but it's like coming from the future and knowing what the mistakes have been in other markets
Yeah.
and bringing that sensibility here to Vietnam. And so allowing Vietnam to skip steps and hopefully multiple steps, right? So, Vietnam skipped the beeper generation, right? I grew up getting, when I was in high school, I was so floored because I got a beeper, right? I was
Yeah. Right.
connected,
Right.
right? And that never happened here, right?
Mm.
We basically went to mobile phones, and then quickly went to smartphones. You know, the biggest barrier obviously was not want or need; it was just cost. And so obviously as costs went down, smartphone adoption took off, and even today Vietnam's data plan costs are quite low, across the globe compared to the rest of the globe. Um, so that's why I thought it was really great, is that I can come from another market and bring ideas here, you know. And also I was very fortunate to work at the company I worked at because we were rapidly growing. People loved going to the cinema. It
Yeah.
was we saw ourselves as ambassadors in a sense, right? So our whole motto was to bring world class cinema to Vietnam at affordable prices for most people, or many, right? So, especially your upperly mobile, middle class Vietnamese people. So we wanted to bring this fantastic experience, to their hometown, and we were able to delight and surprise people. A lot of the same concept were at Apple, but in retail, and uh, and yeah, we were able to do that. And so along the way, we were able to just continue to roll out new and innovative things, like rolling out more cinema locations,
Yeah.
launching Dolby Atmos, launching online ticketing, all
Yeah.
of these things. Uh, this is one of the largest loyalty programs in the country. All of those things that we were able to do was, again, brought this idea of like, well, we kind of know, we have a good sense of what doesn't work in other places, and we're open enough to try things out here in Vietnam to see what our customers would like and enjoy and find value in. So that was a lot of fun. And then along the way, it's we continue just listening and trying out new things.
That's
Sorry,
awesome.
long-winded answer to your
No, no,
question.
that was a beautiful answer. That was a beautiful. You tapped on something that I think is really interesting, and I think for young entrepreneurs or business people that have grown up in the culture that they're operating in, who are young entrepreneurs and business people who have grown up in that culture and who have are operating inside of a box, so to speak. It can be a little bit of a disadvantage to not see that there are other ways of doing things and to look at that. But there also can be an advantage if you can jump laterally into a different market. Now, one of the things that you pointed out was I remember in 2001, I grew up, some of my big cultural experiences was going to movies growing up. It was the movie
Hmm.
theater was a place that you went. It was
Hmm.
a thing. It was one of our core pieces of entertainment. I mean, I remember in university, the Star Wars prequels came out, and I'm
Sure.
just like, Went there. It was a huge thing watching the original trilogy re-released in the theater, just like mind blown, And, you know, then I came here and someone was like, let's go watch a movie. And I was like, yes, I haven't seen a movie since I moved here. And so we went out near the airport, way out there.
Oh,
And,
okay. CC Plaza,
yep. And there
I'm
was this,
guessing.
it was before that even. It was this
Oh,
little like hole in the wall coffee
yeah, that
shop
one.
that, yeah,
Oh,
is it that
coffee
one?
shop. Okay.
It was
Oh,
like
no, no.
it
I'm thinking
wasn't
of
a
a different
coffee
one.
shop. It was a movie theater, but there were
Hmm.
these bench seats in there. Someone was
Yeah,
walking in and out, handing out like little wet towelettes, and like they were giving you a glass of Jedi, like which is iced tea. And then there
sure.
was a person taking orders, walking in and out. The air conditioner was moderately working. There were people sitting on the seats on their cell phone, and it was a very different experience. And yet, it took people going, all right, we have customers who want this. We know we just have to get there. And I remember that early on when I would watch a movie here, they would have these, later when I came back and the cinemas were starting to grow and get established.
Hmm.
And there was an interesting thing where people had they were having these advertisements. Don't answer your phone in the middle of a movie. Don't,
Yeah.
don't talk, don't pull a bun me out of your bag,
Hmm.
and so it was comical for everyone, but at the same time it was this process of trying to help people skip steps, to try to get to the place so that a even better product could be delivered, because you needed an educated public. You needed, you part of marketing, to me, in my opinion, is education of the customer. You
Hmm.
have to guide people to understand what the product is that you're selling them. And yet, I love as well where you talk about the friction points. That to me is such a great way, not just a problem and solution type of approach, but like, where are things getting stuck? Where are things having a challenge, and how can you create something that allows that to flow better and allows this rapid acceleration. Can you talk to me about those? How have you, as a business person, as an entrepreneur, as a as someone in business, identified friction points?
I think um, so. I for me, I'm my background was actually in IT.
Okay.
So I went when I went to USC for undergrad. I graduated out of a program. Actually, I don't know what it's called right now, but it was called Management Information Systems.
Okay.
And we're straddle we people that coming out of that program straddle the line between pure business users and IT people. So we get a little bit of coding experience, a lot of, and it's the program is run out of the business school. So in that sense, I've always been kind of very data driven. Um, Want to build spreadsheets and put things into Excel and be able to tell a story from the data. So there's that mindset, and then combine that with um, the opportunity to observe behavior every day in the cinema. And my day was usually about when I finished work for the day. The great thing is that I would basically walk every cinema room, and I would just go check. And it's on my way out the office. And of course, sometimes it would be a 5 minute walk, but usually it turned out to be a 30 to 45 minute walk. And my wife is like, "Okay, are you coming home yet, or what's going on? I'm waiting for you." And I'd have this opportunity to see how people are consuming the product, right? So case in point, for example, is that the concession stand, right? The board. How do we observe people? How do they interact with the staff? What are they looking at? How long are they dwelling at that time when they're looking? So I think those observational skills are really important. And then also I'll talk to customers too, right? So yeah, I so also further background. I'm not Vietnamese American. I'm Chinese American. So I moved here with. I actually don't even speak Chinese either. So Vietnamese is probably my second language now. And so I'll try to talk to customers and Either talk to probably the young high school students, because more often than not, you know, they would speak English, or some of the older professionals, and I'll talk to them and see how they're doing and how they're doing their night, and just make a lot of observations. And then, of course, also talking to the frontline staff and seeing how they're doing, how the customers are responding to our promotional materials, um, and identify friction points, right? Um, one thing that was really fascinating for me that's very different than um, American cinema going habits was, so first of all, like up in Hanoi, people get really dressed up,
Yeah.
especially back in those days. Um, so, they'll have their cafe sit like downstairs on the little
Yep.
chairs, and they'll spend like, 10,000 or $20,000. And then they'll go buy a movie ticket that costs like, what, $4 or $5, right?
Yeah.
Upstairs, right? Um, but they're all dressed up. They're in
Hmm.
their pea coats, they're in their expensive clothes, really nice shoes. I'd always have to dress up when I go up to Hanoi. Um, and so that was very different for me. And so we have to think about, like, okay, how do we upscale our experience for the Hanoi market? Whereas down here, it's much more casual. It's
Yeah.
much more like LA, and but it's still a high emotional investment in watching a cinema because it's so expensive. But and so therefore it led to really long ticket buying times. And so I'd
Hmm.
go and observe, right? And so compared to when you go to the US and like people, now we have kiosks, right? But back then
Yeah.
you just look at the board, like, okay, I want this movie this time. Okay. But especially in the earlier days, and it's probably less so now, but you'd walk up to the cashier, right? And there's a bunch of movie flyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, what's that? Why do we have to spend so much money on these postcards? It's because the cashiers, I call them, I nickname them myself, sommeliers,
Hmm.
because what you would do is that um, the staff would actually have to walk a lot of the customers through every movie,
Yeah.
because again, it's like buying a car, or it's a high emotional investment for your time and money. And so, like, you actually have to walk them through. So you're looking at maybe 5 to 7 minutes to sell one movie ticket, or two, I guess, two movie tickets, right? Also, try to upsell them too, right? On the combo and the movie, the popcorn and stuff too, right? But um, so you have to factor that in, right? It's like, why do we always have to have so many cashiers? Oh, it's because the service time is high, but that's how you deliver great service, right? And so therefore, you don't let customers go away thinking, oh, I got cheated, I have the wrong movie, right? You're able to sell them on these different, and talk to them and walk them through the different movies. And so that is very, very different, right? And so for me, I was like, okay, well, what are the things that we can do to better communicate? Okay, so let's put up more movie posters. Let's show more movie trailers. Let's get a great website going. Let's start doing a lot more email marketing,
Yeah.
right? And be able to tell the story of these different movies better, right? And also, for example, back in 2009, 2010, like, um, that's when we started the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That was
Right.
phase zero, right? When before there's any concept of that, it was, Iron Man. It was before Iron Man, right? Um, so you didn't have a lot of legacy. You had these unknown characters, and some of the biggest movies back then were like Twilight, right?
Right.
Like those young adult novels, right? But
Yep.
things like Iron Man 2, the whole MCU, the whole DCU, that was unheard of back then,
Yeah.
right? That there was no legacy to build on. So yes, you had to explain you had to explain superhero movies, you had to explain all these different things, right? That were totally new. Plus, also, um, you take into account the seasonality, and that is an amazing period of time where the cinemas will typically do 3 to 4x our regular business in a very short amount of time, in a 2 to 3 week period, right? Um, but it's because they go back to their hometowns, or they're visiting or something, right? But that may be the only time in the year that they go watch a movie.
Hmm.
And so you see you see on their faces their delight when they walk into the cinema, especially the earlier designs for Megastar, which were bright and neon, and it was just otherworldly, at
Yeah.
that time. It was very different. And so to see that delight was just amazing. And so again, you have to be humble and take that into account when you're, trying to service your customers' needs. Yeah.
There's one of something that you tapped on that I'm reading a book right now called The Revenge of Analog. I'm a huge fan of film photography. I was a photographer for
Mhm.
years, and albeit I use my digital cameras all the time for making videos and such, and I love them. But at the
Mhm.
same time, I'm a huge fan of analog film photography and such. And in this book, one of the things that's interesting in this book is they talk about how um, the record store experience back in the day. You know how record stores worked, and one of the fundamental things with record stores was that there was this engagement with the salesperson. Like when you came in to a record store, there'd be a guy sitting there who, a lot of these record, store workers worked there because they would get first dibs on the new music. They would get the first
Mhm.
chance to buy these new records. They would get to listen to them before anyone else. They would get to
Mhm.
hear the demos. They get to listen to all the samples that were coming out from the music companies that were sent to these stores.
Right.
And these people engaged you and educated you. Even talking about movies now, where you go to the movie, before my wife and I go to the movie, we've checked the times online. We know what time it's going to play, and we get an idea about what the movie's all about because of the trailers and because of the internet. But it used to be, I remember, like, the wait times at the movie theaters back when I was in high school were quite long. People would walk up, you would look at the flyers, and the person sitting there in front of you would educate you on what's playing tonight. Well, welcome to the movie theater. I'd like to share
Mhm.
with you, well, we've got Back to the Future 2, and we've got this, whatever it might be. I didn't go see
Right.
Back to the Future 2 in a theater. I think for me, my first movie in the theater was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was a great movie to watch in the theater. But you had to be educated, and I think that's something that in our digital age we tend to forget, that especially in sales, that personal relationship, that connection with the customer is so important. And then I feel that
Mhm.
companies have to find ways to replicate that in the digital age. How are you giving these people these tailored experiences that is still personalized in some way, that still makes them feel um, connected to? I remember when the when I first came here, cell phones were just getting going, and it was a really
Mhm.
interesting phenomenon to watch because Nokia had cornered the market. Like at that point in time, like they were crushing it, and everyone wanted, the certain brick phone, and it was
Mhm.
like it was such a desired thing. And then I remember right before I left, the Motorola Razr dropped, and it was just like
Right.
this game changer, and people were paying $1,500 for a little Motorola Razr. It
Right.
was it was insane prices these things were going for on the market because it was just supply and demand. Everyone wanted one. But one of the things that was really interesting is that the consumers were just buying whatever they were buying. But now consumers are much more savvy, and people really, really start asking questions. And I think that's one of the things the internet has really changed is that you have much more, and I think this is worldwide, much more informed, clients and customers. People know more about what they're going, but they might have more information, but there's still the human aspect. I
Mhm.
wanted to get a new phone for shooting reels because my wife is a singer, and that's part of the business. We have to go out and make reels. And I have my mirrorless camera that I use for our more fashionable stuff, but sometimes I can't go lugging around my whole camera set.
Mhm.
And so I was looking at comparing two of the major top end phones. And then where did I go? Went straight to YouTube. I wanted to
Mhm.
see people that were doing walkthroughs for me and hear the
Mhm.
human perspective. Like, let's talk to people, let's hear from people who not necessarily influencers, but kind of influencers who have that authority and understand that topic. And here I was, an uninformed consumer. I watched this YouTube video and I was like, now I know exactly what I'm going to buy. And it was that human touch is still there.
Yeah, and the mark of any good YouTube, or I guess any creator, right, in the creator economy, is you need to break that wall, right? You need to break the fourth wall, and you need to make sure that you're engaging, um, and speaking directly, right, and to the audience, to the listener, on almost on a, you want to make them feel that it's a one-on-one conversation like we're having now, right? That's what you want. That's the ideal. And then that duplicates, and that's just an analog, right, to an in-person experience, right?
Yeah.
Whether you're going to a mobile shop to buy something, and also again the high touch service, right? So, have you ever bought a phone in Vietnam?
I have actually. I did once.
Yeah. So it takes a long time, right? It's like buying a car. I probably
Yep.
spend the same amount of time when I bought a iPhone, the iPhone I have right now, from FPT, through a friend, right? Gave me a good contact. But I was like, yeah, it took me 2 hours to get my phone, you know. But I didn't rush it because I wanted to observe myself. I was curious, and I would see other customers buying, and this is during the iPhone 12 launch.
Yeah.
And I was watching other customers walk in the same thing, and this the FPT staff person would just walk them through their whole phone, do the whole transfer, help them install things, very high touch. For and for me, I'm very used to, like, you walk into an Apple store, you buy something online, and you just walk out, you're done,
Yep.
right? It's very transactional, but I think that's again one of the beautiful things about Vietnam is that, um, the cost of labor is still reasonable, and you're able to deliver that kind of high touch, um, at scale, right? For people, and how we continue to scale that in like with technology. I think there's opportunities to do that with, obviously whatever it's talking about is these chatbots, right? Or AI
Yeah.
driven chat. And I think, powered by large language models. And I think that is very rich and scalable. And I think, um, I think there's obviously going to be a lot of detractors because this is brand new technology, right? And, in the sense that, not, I mean, it's been the work has been going on for decades. However, it's had its iPhone moment. It's had its breakthrough moment, like, last year, end of last year, right? And that's it's not even 9 months,
Yeah.
right? That it really hit mass. Think of the iPhone when it came out, right? Or the Razor, or your BlackBerry, and how long, or DirecTV, you name it, right? How long it took to, the dispersion, for that technology to hit your early adopters and your mass audience. Um, but it's hitting, right, and I think that's going to create a very different, relationship people have with technology, and hopefully it will lead to better outcomes where
Yeah.
people do feel that they're getting, they have good value, and they're getting you know whether it's a chat or typing or whatever it is, that they're getting out of that experience what they need. So it's truly fascinating times right now.
There was a really interesting clip I saw this morning where it was the CEO of ChatGPT. It was about 4 years ago, and he was in an
Mhm.
interview, and they were like, "Well, how are you going to monetize this?" And he's like, "We don't know. Not quite sure. We're not quite sure where we're going with it, but we just know that we're creating something that has value, and we're going to keep putting this out there." And the whole audience started laughing at him, like they were all laughing, like not in a fun way, like just like it was like laughing down at
You
him.
idiot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you idiot. It was very, very much like whatever, man. And then like they were like fast forward 4 years, and like, but what his statement was, I don't know. We'll probably build this software, and then after we get it to the point where we'll probably ask it how we can make money with it. That was his actual answer, and people started laughing at him. And now it's breaking through. And I mean, and you see this. Like, I remember I was on a movie in the summer of 2008 when the iPhone hit, and it was funny because it was people were using it, and we were all like cavemen and are fascinated. Like on set, people were like, "Look, it's a guitar." Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum,
I can pinch, yeah.
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 Well, look at this, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And like now, people can even envision the way that we are using these
Correct.
touch screen devices now.
Correct.
And I think that, again, it's another one of our caveman moments. We're like, look at this, I can ask it. But like, the exponential growth of this technology, of any technology, when they hit, it just revolutionizes things. I mean, think back to the BlackBerry. I'm really excited. I haven't seen the BlackBerry movie yet, but it's supposed to be this really good
Oh,
movie with
Blackberry
the
movie. Okay.
actor from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He is
Okay.
the lead actor in it, and it was his first lead role. And like all the It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia crew is cheering him on. They're like, maybe one of us will finally win an award. Gotta love that show. Those guys are so funny. But the story follows the evolution of BlackBerry, because you think about it,
Mhm.
BlackBerry revolutionized business because you couldn't send emails on the go. You couldn't send, you could, like, think about like the texting on a Nokia was a nightmare. Got the night. Hang on, I gotta get the letter. Click this three
Yeah.
times. Oh, I missed it.
Yes.
Let's go back and circle back around.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and then suddenly you get this device that gives people a keyboard, and it was just like business people around the world adopted this technology so quickly, and it changed business because business now was mobile. And it used to be that business people were tied to an office more than other professions, because they had to be
Mhm.
in office accessing their computer and their phones. And now they had one, like both of these combined in one place. And so you could be a businessman traveling and not have those hours at the airport that used to be absolutely wasted. Work time was now productive. It was a game changer. And
Mhm.
I love how, a new technologies emerge that absolutely completely disrupt the market. Not if you have, oh, the sky is falling, but at the same time, no, man, it's just changing.
True. True. And also, I was going to comment there. Even um, you just never know how people are going to use technology, right?
Right?
And like so, for example, when I was in China in 2005, and I'd be there every 5 to 10 years, right? And I was like, oh, why is everyone doing this? And they listen. They do this because they don't chat, right? It's a
Yeah.
pain. It's a pain to type. So you
Mm-hmm.
just record nothing but audio um, messages, and you send that back to people. Um, and this is kind of probably before a lot of the audio to text stuff, right? But
Yep.
yeah, people were just talking back and forth, and um, so I've still I'm just a typer, right? So I'm fine with that. But I was just like, oh, you just never know how people use technology for different things, right? In different ways that surprise you, right? And um, I don't know know necessarily whether you know the WeChat Weixin creators imagine that people would be doing so little typing, and they'd just be doing recording audio. Um, I haven't read anything about that, so I got to imagine maybe that was a surprise for them, right? But you give it to people and you see what happens, um, and that's great, and just like I think come back to Vietnam, it's like yeah, you just never know how people are going to. I think it's the entrepreneurial spirit of doing things and um, being willing to take risks and try things out and maybe doing two or three side hustles
Yep.
um, that you just don't expect. Um, and so I think that's, um, yeah, it's just always really surprising, um, like I was a little, so back again, back to the cinema. Um, we would like during our low season, we would hand out like little coupons, basically. Like, okay, yeah, if you spend 100,000, we'll give you like a 5,000 off coupon, and on like Monday to Wednesday or something, like during the afternoon, just
Yeah.
terrible times, terrible days, right? So all this off peak stuff because that's what the studios will let us do. Um, so like let's say it was like 5,000 off, right? But then we found out that the vouchers like we had to reprint the vouchers so very quickly. We found out what was going on was that people were either stealing or they're figuring out ways to get a lot of vouchers, and then they're selling them on the street for like 1,000 or 2,000 to people.
Oh my gosh.
So so they would work that hard to make 1,000 or 2,000 you know. So it was a win-win, I guess, right? In that sense, that we got these coupons out to more people outside the cinema, and that would help draw them into the cinema. That's great. The customer wins because they're saving a little bit of money, right?
Yep.
And then this unrelated third party was like out there doing our marketing. So I was a little bit upset
You
at
don't even
first,
have
but I
to
was
pay
like,
them.
we didn't have to pay them. I was amazed at the ingenuity and desire
Yep.
to make a little bit of money. And so, I never try to count out um, a young Vietnamese person's ab- ability to do something new and different. Yeah.
Then this is something this plays into something. I'm teaching a university class in the States, and I'm not going to turn this into a bashing of the American youth. Don't worry. But it's interesting that one of the things that I find is that there's a lot of excuses that people give for things not being where they want them to be.
Mm.
And I think that, it's interesting that when I had a student the other week that came to class and said, I almost did my homework. And I was like, that's great. I almost invented some amazing technology that radicalized this market, almost, but I didn't, and it's like there's something to be said for my wife. I was teaching her an idiom, throw shit at the wall and see what sticks last
Yeah.
night. She's like, what does that mean? And she's like, what are you talking about? Why would you throw poop on the wall? And I was like, I'm not throwing poop on the wall. Why would you throw poop on the wall? I'm not throwing poop on the wall. It means that you take things and you throw it and you see what works, because especially for media and the modern media landscape, we're
Right.
creating stuff for TikTok and Instagram and other media
Mm-hmm.
outlets, and you don't know what's going to be the thing that sticks. You don't know what's going to be the thing that works. And
Right.
I think that you had said that, having a lot of side hustles. My daughter and I were watching this fishing video. I, I let my daughter spend some more time with grandpa and grandma. And so she's come back and she now loves fishing videos. And I was like, where did you learn to like fishing videos? And she's like, grandpa watches fishing videos. So now she likes watching. And she's got these funny, but she was watching this fishing video and she's like, Daddy, why are they on the boat with four different, fishing lines out? Why do they not just have one fishing line? And I said, if they have one fishing line, there's only a chance to catch one fish. You put out four fishing lines and you suddenly have a chance to catch four fish. Well, she's like, well, how do you know which one's going to catch the fish? And I said, you don't. And that's the
Right.
trick. You
Yeah.
put four out in four different
Right.
places and you monitor them, you watch them, you give each of
Right.
them your attention. And when one of them goes, you pick it up, you reel that
Right.
fish in. And
Yeah.
it was just, I was like, such a great analogy and lesson to teach my kid. I was like, thank you, Grandpa,
Yeah.
for helping her watch those fishing
Yeah.
videos.
Exactly. And then you're like, and then you do A/B testing
Right.
using different types of food, and yeah,
Yep.
a lot
It's
of ways to do
totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Well, it's interesting. Now, what are some of the if you could go back and give your younger self some advice on business, on career,
Mhm.
what might some of that advice be?
I think, um, especially in my early days here in Vietnam, I should have. I learned. over the past 4 or 5 years, I've invested more into developing my ties into the culture. So I'm trying to more actively learn Vietnamese and pick it up, right? So I wish I was much more all in the
Mm.
earlier days. When I first moved here, this is in 2009. So California's unemployment rate when I graduated was well over 10%. And so a little bit it was like, well, I'll go like hang out with this amazing girl and see where it goes. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll be back in a year. No big deal. But I really should have been much more fully invested, because I think those that those other VQ that moved here or other foreigners, just anyone at that time, they have done very well. They were much more, um, whether you say fully invested or just ambitious. I sometimes I wish like I had taken more risk and done more things because I was presented with a phenomenal opportunity. I had a very supportive boss and mentor and great friend. Our CEO was our GM, like our leadership team was fantastic, and they gave me so many opportunities. I could have done more. I could have asked for more. I probably could have gone on to like a GM role if I had pushed for it, but I settled. I got too comfortable, and I think I wish I'd done that a lot more of that. Um, the other thing too is I wish I was much more. Um, it was I took the much easier route in the sense that socially, I hung out with other foreigners
Mm.
basically, and it really I didn't have the opportunity aside from my team. Now my team, I developed a great relationship because they're stuck with me. They're crazy manager. So of course I had a great relationship with them, but I wish that I had done a much better job of getting to know other young and upcoming Vietnamese. Selfishly, it's about um, creating business opportunities or finding future talent. Like that's part of it. But I just missed out on that, and I wish I had done more of that um, when I was younger. And so that's something as I in my we do some angel investing and coaching for friends and startups and informally, and it's one of the messages I have for them. And these founders are typically under 30, younger than I was when I first moved here, and so I think it's and so for someone like me, I'll be 50 in a few years, couple of years, right? So my that opportunity to give that kind of advice to someone that's you know um, a good 20 years younger than me, I think is nice, and maybe it'll stick. Maybe it'll stick, right, in the back of their minds in the future. And so I think, yeah, to summarize, yeah, I wish I was a little bit more ambitious, and I wish I had deepened my commitment to the into the fabric of Vietnam in those early days.
I like that. Now you also are a father like me.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the principles that you are trying to teach your children about fiscal responsibility, about business, about this stuff? What are some of the things that you're trying to instill into the next generation?
We're trying to figure that out,
Right?
because on one hand, we're very fortunate and we're able to take our kids back to see the family back at home, and so we fly. And when I was growing up, I came to Singapore. Maybe I'd go to either Singapore or Hong Kong, maybe once every 5 to 7 years when I was growing up as a kid, and sometimes we get to do that twice a year, and we get to fly around here within Vietnam as well, and um, it's hard. Um, though we do talk about hard work, I think the best way to teach that is to show them,
Yeah.
right? And my wife came across something that's really good, which is like and she heard this from someone else, maybe a podcast or something as well, which was like, as parents that work, we should never feel ashamed when we have to work, and
Yeah.
we should never apologize, right? And I think that's how we show our children, um, yeah, there's a time and place for work and non-work time, and while you're working, you got to get stuff done, and so my children understand. I think they get it, and so my 3-year old, her working is learning, right? And so that's what
Yes.
we tell them. It's like, well, your job now is to learn. And so my 3-year old will go on her little Chromebook and she'll go on Khan Academy, and she's like, oh, I need to do work. Yeah, that's your work. Yes, that's exactly your work. You don't get paid for it, but that's how you work. That's how you learn, right? And also that's what we talk about too, right? Is that um, working is learning, working is growing,
Yes.
and maybe it's through relationships and developing relationships and speaking to people, understanding them. Um, and so we talk about learning all the time, and I think that's another way to do it, is that never look at work as doing work, but work is learning something new and contributing. Um, and then, I think the other tough part is, like, teaching the value of money.
Yeah.
Um, it's hard for, like, maybe a 3-year old, but I think with a 7-year old, she gets it, that things cost money. And if the work, it requires it. There's a unit of labor that comes out to some value, you know, and then you can take that money that you get and then and spend it on things. So I think the other thing too we talk about is trying our best not to be wasteful as well,
Yeah.
right? Because we talk about, like, oh, when the food that grandma makes or the food that someone makes, there's time and effort creating that food. There's time and effort in acquiring that raw ingredient, and we
Hmm.
have to we have to value that. Um, so we try our best. I'm probably something we should continue to work at. Um, you know, um, Yeah, yeah, that's what we try to do. But that the kids definitely see that we were out, we're doing things and working, um, and but we try our best.
It's awesome. Well, what about this last question? If you had Aladdin's lamp, you have a
Mhm.
genie pops out, and you can wish for any direction for startup money to start any business you want or do whatever you want. What would you like to be doing?
Oh, I think for us, and maybe as so most recently, I got into the education sector. I was working for a great company called Coder School, and really trying to help bring in the next generation of tech talent, right? Help bring them into the fold. And then what my wife is also doing is in training and development as well. So I think that's what we think, and also probably because we have kids now too, right? We feel that education is a great way to have a lasting impact, um, but it's not the NGO route, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. I mean, that there's a lot of great work that needs to be done, especially here in Vietnam, for the public good. But the way we look at it, we want to build a sustainable and profitable company that where there's reasonable returns, and then we can put that money back into reinvesting into more education and broadening the impact. And so I think education is really important for us. It's a and so our thesis is that Vietnam is definitely going places, right?
Yeah.
And but in order so that we're not stuck into a middle economy trap, right, is to push forward on education, right? And there's just so many companies that are interested in, opening up offices in Vietnam and doing more, but they have so many challenges in talent, in
Yeah.
developing talent, in finding the right skilled talent. And so, really, what's the key, and I guess the not a roadblock, but a speed bump for Vietnam, right? What slows us down is the quality of the talent. And so if there's ways that we can help close the gap or get them trained up, open their minds, I think that will uh, overall help the whole country. right? Continue
Yeah.
to on its ambition. Um, so so I think that's what we'd like to do, right? Is to be successful in educating and reaching more people, and having them see the immediate impact of investing their time into the training. Whether it's training at Coder School or training through SkillsBridge, um, to be able to um, really unlock their own full potential, right? And just to continue to level up.
It's, you learn for life, right? I'm a huge fan of
Exactly.
education.